Right now at 4 o'clock, an admission of guilt and sighs of relief almost 3 years after the Highland Park parade massacre. Robert Crimo III pleaded guilty this morning to all 69 counts related to this case. On July 4th, 2022, Crimo shot and killed 7 people and injured 48 others when he opened fire during that parade. Now, this plea change happened just as opening statements were set to begin. And it means that Crimo's victims will not have to endure a lengthy trial. But prosecutors say this wasn't a deal.
Charlie Wojciechowski has been following this case from the very beginning, and he's there in the courtroom this morning. Charlie, tell us what happened here.
Well, Alex, Marion, this really couldn't have come at anything but a last-minute deal. That's exactly what happened in court. The judge had even dismissed one of the jurors and replaced them with one of the alternates when one of the defense attorneys stood up and said that Robert Crimo III wanted to change his plea from not guilty to guilty. In an 8th-floor courtroom filled with the families of Highland Park shooting victims, a last-minute surprise no one was expecting. Robert Crimo III changing his plea to guilty.
I think there is a huge collective feeling of relief. Our community wanted justice.
The 24-year-old Crimo was facing 21 first-degree murder counts for opening fire on the crowds who had come to watch the Highland Park Independence Day parade in July of 2022. 7 people were killed and dozens were injured. The plea today has the same effect as Crimo, having been found guilty on all counts.
This was not a negotiation. This was not a deal. He made a free decision to plead guilty to every single count that this trial team and this law enforcement team was about to present to this jury.
Crimo had pled guilty before, but withdrew that plea at the last minute, creating an emotional roller coaster for victims and their families.
They have all gone home to process. They each expressed an individual and a collective sense of relief, but today was a very emotional event, and they are all asking for some time and space to come to terms with what happened today.
And now, according to Highland Park's mayor, the time for healing can begin.
At this moment, we're all just sort of surprised and relieved that they don't have to experience the unbelievable pain of reliving this experience for the next 3 to 5 weeks.
Now, prosecutors say they were 1,000% prepared to go to trial this morning. They have evidence that tied Crimo to the crime, including DNA evidence, video evidence, audio evidence, and people who identified him on the street. All that was to be presented. It will not be presented now. Right now, Crimo is still in jail, awaiting his sentencing hearing. That happens April 23rd. We're live in Waukegan. Charlie Wojciechowski, NBC 5 News.
Let's get right to that courtroom surprise in Lake County this morning. Robert Crimo III now pleading guilty in the Highland Park parade shooting that killed 7 people and left dozens injured. It was the 4th of July in 2022 where Crimo was accused of opening fire on a crowd of families out celebrating the 4th of July holiday. Moments before the opening statements were supposed to begin this morning, Crimo flipped his plea to guilty on 69 counts of murder and attempted murder. But the Lake County State's attorney made it clear this was not a plea deal and that nothing was given to Crimo in exchange for his guilty plea.
This was not a negotiation. This was not a deal. He made a free decision to plead guilty to every single count that this trial team and this law enforcement team was about to present to this jury. He received nothing in exchange for this plea today. We were 1,000% ready to go to trial and to prove him guilty to the jury.
Crimo faces life in prison when he is set to be sentenced on April 23rd. NBC 5's Kate Chappell is live for us in Highland Park with reaction. Kate.
And Marian, as you can imagine, mixed reaction here in Highland Park from those who were here that day, the people who live and work here in this community. Grateful they won't have to relive that horrific day during a weeks-long trial, but also who understand that a guilty plea won't erase the pain.
There's no relief.
Barbara Cantor will never forget July 4th, 2022. She was standing along the parade route in Highland Park when shots rang out. The man in front of her was hit.
As soon as I heard the pop, 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 I said to my husband, I grabbed him, there's a shooter here, let's get inside.
Today, some closure as the man accused of killing 7 people and injuring nearly 50 more pleads guilty on all counts.
I'm just glad that to some extent he's taking some responsibility.
Although a plea will not bring back the lives lost, there is hope it brings healing.
We have to keep the focus on trying to pass legislation that will prevent these things from happening because they are preventable.
Kitty Brantner founded March 4th, 2 days after the shooting.
Assault weapons have to go!
The group's singular mission? To get a federal ban on assault weapons, like the one used that day.
We're just really grounded in, the fact that, again, hopefully the community here in Highland Park can focus on their healing journey rather than the spectacle of a trial.
Lawmakers are also weighing in on the plea. Representative Brad Schneider saying in part the suspect should spend the rest of his life in prison. And he is relieved by the guilty plea, which will bring at least some sense of closure. Inside the Lake County Courthouse, Highland Park Mayor Nancy Rotering expressing her gratitude.
At this moment, we're all just sort of surprised and relieved that they don't have to experience the unbelievable pain of reliving this experience for the next 3 to 5 weeks.
And when he is sentenced on April 23rd, survivors and victims' families will be able to make victim impact statements in court. Also today, Mayor Rotering made clear that mental health services are still available to the community here. Live in Highland Park, Kate Chappell, NBC 5 News.
Kate, thank you.
There is a big sigh of relief in Highland Park tonight, a town that won't have to relive the trauma of that painful 4th of July in 2022. In a stunning turn of events, the suspected parade shooter changed his plea to guilty to all 69 counts. All this just moments before his trial was set to begin. A change shocking many in the courtroom this morning. NBC5's Natalie Martinez joining us here with reaction to that stunning change. Natalie?
You talked about the relief, Stephen, and that relief comes because victims and families are spared reliving the horror for the length of a trial. But with this comes renewed energy to fight for tougher gun laws for all.
Tonight, Highland Park and its survivors are processing what happened in court this morning when Robert Crimo III changed his not guilty plea to guilty of shooting and killing 7 people at the 2022 Highland Park 4th of July parade.
Now we don't need our friends, our colleagues, our neighbors to testify, to continue to watch this over and over of weeks and relive the trauma.
This paves the way for some to a quicker path to healing.
They have all gone home to process.
Doctors Emily and Elliot Lieberman are advocates and Highland Park residents who are heading to the Capitol next month to make changes in light of their hometown tragedy.
There is no closure until there's a federal assault weapons ban because this can happen in any community across the country.
They're dedicated to On Call for Kids, a nonprofit of physicians across the country working for tougher gun laws.
The only way that we can move forward as a country to make sure that our communities are safer is by enacting stricter firearm safety legislation. And that's what we do at On Call for Kids.
Dr. Ashley Jaffe is a pediatric rehab medicine doctor from Northbrook. She was shot in the left hand at the parade.
I had severe pain in my hand and I saw blood dripping onto the sidewalk.
We spoke to her by phone from Philadelphia tonight, where she now lives but can't work.
Due to my neurologic injury from the gunshot wound, I have been unable to return to taking care of my patients. I've spent my career taking care of patients with firearm injuries and gunshot injuries, and after I became one myself, my entire life changed. It's kind of shocking to me that less than 60 seconds of gunfire are still completely changing my life 2.5 years later.
In fact, Dr. Jaffe was heading to the airport to testify at trial, but didn't take the flight Monday.
I think I'm still processing everything that happened today.
Crimo's mother tried to stop her son from pleading, but the judge stopped her.
He received nothing in exchange for this plea today. We were 1,000% ready to go to trial.
Susie Wall is a Highland Park mom.
I'm, of course, glad that he pled guilty. I think this has just dragged on far too long. So I'd like to see 2 things. Number 1, the death penalty back on the table in the state of Illinois. And number 2, justice moving.
I believe that the first step in reconciliation is admitting wrongdoing and saying you're sorry.
The legal team representing nearly 50 victims of the mass shooting says that their clients will be present at sentencing on April 23rd. Now, they plan to tell their stories to court. Stefan?
So many people who lived through those terrible moments. Thank you so much, Natalie Martinez, with us tonight.